Do-do-do. Hey, good morning, everybody. We're getting ready to record today's episode of Mike in the Midwest. Once I get the camera set, there we go. How you doing? Happy Tuesday. Cheers to you. Let's record Mike in the Midwest. We're going to talk about pizza places because it was Pie Day yesterday. We missed the opportunity, but let's do it today. A day late and a dollar short, right? All right. All righty then. Let's do this. Episode 90 already. Holy smoly. You put episode 90 together with 2,100 and something of the Be Our Guest podcast, and we're doing something. We're going to eventually figure this podcasting thing out. Here we go. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 90. Wait, hang on. Let's try that again. I forgot I can play the intro now on here by doing this and this. And here we go. You know what? I got to hit record first. Hello, Margie. Here we go. You're listening to Mike in the Midwest, an exclusive mini podcast for the patrons of the Be Our Guest podcast. Sit back and relax as Mike shares his stories of growing up here in the Midwest. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can check out our website over at beourguestpodcast.com. And I'm coming to you live from the Be Our Guest podcast studios in lovely St. Peters, Missouri, about 20 miles west of downtown St. Louis, here in the heart of the Midwest. And I hope you're having a great week. Thank you so much for being a patron of our show. Of course, this is not the main show. This is just kind of a little bonus episode, a little side thing for the Be Our Guest podcast. I hope you always enjoy all the Disney content. We had Scott on the show the past week because Ricky and Pam were out of town. Hopefully you enjoyed those conversations with the listener questions that we had on Wednesday and Scott's trip report from Friday from the Princess Half Marathon weekend. We had a good time with that. And of course, we had the live call-in show the past Sunday night, and that will come out on Thursday. So you can check that out on the feed if you missed that. And the ladies were back last night as we recorded the shows for this coming week, which you'll hear again, all kinds of confusing. You'll hear those on Wednesday and Friday of this week. And of course, on Wednesday, we answered your listener questions as we do every Wednesday. But then on Friday, we had a fun discussion about the positives and negatives of all three resort categories at Walt Disney World. And there are some things. It was kind of interesting because, you know, a little behind the scenes for the show. And I think that's kind of what this podcast is about because you're the super fans. You guys support us. You guys make the podcast possible. So I love having these conversations with you rather than the audience at large. Is that I get my ideas basically and I'm the one many times that comes up with a topic for the Friday shows. Sometimes Ricky and Pam do, but most of the times I'm like, hey, I thought of this. I want to do this. It's my personality. I mean, if they have an idea, we run with it. I'm not trying to be like a bully or anything, but I tend to be the most excited one. I come to them or I text them, I've got this idea. I want to do the show. And they're very kind. And they're always like, okay, let's do it. So, and a lot of times, because if you know, I'm on the treadmill every morning for a couple of hours, and that's my mic time, that's my think time. So I have plenty of time while I'm sitting there watching The Love Boat on my iPad with no sound, and I listen to podcasts while I'm doing that. So I listen to, 3028 or a lot of tech podcasts, some retro podcasts, whatever. But I'm also thinking about the day, like what's going on. That's where I get the topics for the Friday shows. A lot of times I was thinking, what is a kind of if I had to like think about the categories, deluxe, moderate, value, is there something a value hotel does better than a moderate? And is there something that a deluxe that a value does better than a deluxe? And there are a few things. I mean, I think that the values have better food courts. Like if you have picky eaters for kids, I think that also you can park your car many times a lot closer to a value hotel room than a deluxe hotel, which is important if you drive and you want to get a cooler or something into your room. I just remember those days back when we used to drive when I was scared to fly, and we would always pack a cooler in the car, the big cooler. We'd take a couple six packs of soda. We'd put some sandwiches in there and so forth, and pack it in with the ice. And then this was before the rooms at Walt Disney World had refrigerators. So we would keep ice in it. We'd take the cooler into our room and we'd keep filling it with ice throughout the trip. And that's what we'd use to keep our sodas cold, that we kept in the room during the trip. And so once we got there, it was a challenge to get the cooler into our room if you didn't have a room that was able to get your car close to. And I remember one time we were excited because I paid for the upgraded room at Pop Century because that was like really high living back then, because we never stayed at a moderate or deluxe, but I stayed for the preferred pool view, which was, if it's like those rooms in the 60s that face the hippy dippy pool, like right on the interior of the resort, which is great once you're in there, but you cannot park your car close. So I was dragging this ice chest full of sodas and sandwiches. It was super heavy and it was not convenient. Now, I guess I could have gotten I don't know, I guess they have those at Pop Century, those rolling carts, if I'd have been smarter. But it's just one of those things that is something that I think the values do better than the deluxes. Now, of course, the deluxes have better proximity to parks. They have way better theming. They have bigger rooms. They have better dining. They have, they're going to have multiple forms of transportation to get to the theme parks. They do a lot of things better than values, but values have their thing, and I mean, the price is cheaper, of course. So there's something different. It was a fun conversation. So I do hope you enjoy that conversation on Friday. I will be honest that after doing, and also Friday is our 14th anniversary of the show to the day. We had our first podcast back on March 18th of 2008. March 18th, 2008 was our first show. And so Friday will be our 14-year birthday for the podcast. And I will be honest, I mean, it's hard at this point to come up with topics that we've not really explored that are relevant. I mean, we could talk news, but the problem is we record the shows on Mondays, and by Friday, sometimes the news can be out of, it could be inaccurate. So that's not a great idea. And also, that's somewhat evergreen, where the conversation about resort categories can stick with you for 6 months, a couple years down the line, that could still be relevant. So, and also maybe it'll spark a little, a little pro and con in your mind where you want to stay when you go maybe this summer or this fall, because I think it is fun to get outside your comfort zone, which I say because I'm terrible at it. I always go back to Pop Century. I'm going down in a couple weeks to run the spring surprise weekend. I'll just be down for the weekend. And where did I stay? Pop Century. I was really tempted though to stay at one of the All Stars just to try them out. I haven't been there in a while. And I do like the All Stars, and I'm by myself and I'm trying to save money. But, you know, Pop Century's kind of home for me. I feel comfortable there. So I did spend a little extra because of the Skyliner. So I'm going to be at Pop Century for that weekend. I just like it there. Also, one other thing I wanted to throw out there. This is going to be on the shows. It's actually on Thursday. You'll hear us make this announcement. But if you're going to be down over Spring Surprise, we are doing a mini golf meetup at Fantasia Gardens on that Saturday, April 2nd at 2:00 in the afternoon. So if you want to meet up with us, Scott's going to be there. I'm going to be there. A lot of us are going to be there. Get ready to play some putt-putt. There might be some prizes, but it's 2:00 on April 2nd at Fantasia Gardens over there by the Swan and the Dolphin. Get ready to swing the putter, and we're going to have a good time. We're going to take over Fantasia Gardens. So we'd love to see you there over Spring Surprise. Little BOGP meetup. You don't have to be a lizard to do that or anything like that. So we're going to have a fun meetup. So that's kind of what's going on with the podcast, and we're rolling on. We love the show, 14 years and moving into our 15th. And it's because of your support that we're able to kind of make it through these, last few turbulent years. And I think the show's even gotten stronger because of it. Who would have thought that? Because I thought I was scared to death we were going to be a goner come about 2.5 years ago. But the show's gotten better, and we're getting ready to do some more bigger stuff. People have asked about podcast cruises. Yes, there is one on the horizon. Pam and I talked about that last night. So stay tuned for that. We're looking at dates for that soon. And I'm speaking with Give Kids the World for another fundraising show. So we're going to do that again soon. So we have not gotten away from our roots. Just the last couple of years have kind of shaken us up, right? Things just, we didn't do a podcast cruise. We kind of got out of the groove there last year because things just weren't right. Things were just unsettled for all of us. And I just didn't think it was the right time. But I think that it is time to get back to do what we do. We do podcast cruises every other year. We sail with our listeners. I mean, I have made friends for life on those podcast cruises. We have an amazing time. I mean, in friendships outside of myself, I've seen other families become lifelong friends because they met on these cruises and they met at Walt Disney World. And it is such a blessing to have that happen. Scott and I met on a podcast cruise. And you guys know we're like brothers from another mother at this point. I mean, he is my best friend. We are just thick as thieves. We chat every day on we text, and we're always, as soon as we get to Walt Disney World, we're always getting in trouble, uh in a good way. We're bad influences on each other, but we have a good time. And it's because we met through the podcast. We met on a podcast cruise and just hit it off, and our kids are our daughters get along very well. And it's just it's a blessing. So we're going to get back to those things. So watch for Give Kids the World fundraising shows, watch for podcast cruises, watch for live meetups in the parks. We'll be down there this summer. We're getting back to that. The time it's been weird over the past 2 years. And I feel like you might think that we're not trying to do as much as we did, like hustling wise, because I think we really did try to hustle in our first like 10 years of the show. We did a live show from a treehouse at Walt Disney World where we thought 10 people would show up, and we had 85 people at a treehouse over at Saratoga. It was out of control. We were serving cake. We had iced tea. We had Jay that was making s'mores out on the deck with the barbecue pit. I mean, it was nuts. And we were live on the radio. We had Magical Mouse Radio live. It was a nut house in there, but it was crazy. I'm shocked the cops didn't come arrest us. We've done broadcasts from Give Kids the World live. We've done 12-hour live shows from the studio where we've had call-ins. We're going to still do that kind of stuff. We're not done with that stuff. You might have thought that, we used to do that stuff. We're not doing it. We are going to do that stuff. The last 2 years has been hard, and everybody's just kind of just trying to survive. But I miss that stuff. And we've been doing upgrades here in the studio to make things a little better and to give us the opportunity to do more things on the road and stuff like that. So be ready. We're coming out of this, and we're going to get better. I always want to make the show better. We're not content. We're going to make it better, and it's because of you. So what's going on here in St. Louis this week? The weather is awesome right now, so I'm very happy for that. Today it's going to be 70. Thank goodness. Looks like it's going to be 70 for most of the week. Gonna have a cold day later this week, but things are looking up, and baseball's back. Yeah, baby. So we got that settled. So I'm very happy. I got to wear my Cardinals jersey yesterday as I was recording the podcast. I hope you enjoyed that, unless you're a Cubs fan. I love the Cubs fans. But so we get some baseball games. I think this Sunday is where the first spring training games will start. And I'm just a happier person when baseball's back. And you know what? I know some people aren't the biggest baseball fans, but here's why I love baseball. First of all, I played baseball. Like at one point in 8th grade, I was on 3 different baseball teams at the same time. And I was a pretty good baseball player. That was my sport. I was a left-handed pitcher. I was tall, so it didn't have to be really good. Just left-handed pitchers are kind of you're highly sought after just if you're a left-handed pitcher because you're rare. But the thing is, the funny thing is I live in a town that we're like at a corner where I live now, in a town between it's St. Peter's, Weldon Spring, and Cottleville is where I live. And so when I was in 8th grade, I got recruited to play for this team because my dad in construction worked with this guy named what was his name? Irv. Because he's who my grandpa bought the MG from. That was my first car, by the way, but that's a long story. But Irv, his son played on this, and Irv lived out here in Cottleville. And Cottleville was in the country. I mean, there was nothing in Cottleville. I mean, it could have been Cattleville because there was nothing out here. It was way out west, and nobody came out here. But they had a really good baseball team. It was the Cottleville Cardinals, and they were sponsored, and they were like, that was awesome. So he asked, would your son like to play for the Cottleville Cardinals? And so I was playing for Florissant where I lived at we did a show last year about Wee Hop baseball fields. And that's where I'd always played since I was a little kid. And I was also playing Junior Legion for the Junior Legion squad in 8th grade then too, even though that was a high school team. I got lucky and got on that team. But I did play the 1 year for the Cottleville Cardinals. And what's funny is we used to drive out here every, because we practiced a lot and we had tons of games because it was like a select team. We played a lot of games. And we drive out here almost every day from where I lived in Florissant. And it was like we went out to the country in the middle of nowhere. What's funny? Our home field is 5 minutes east of my house, like 5 minutes more towards the city where I live now. And I didn't realize that when we bought the house. I'm like, oh my gosh, we live right next to C&H, which was the ballpark, which we used to go to, which I always complained because it was in the middle of the country. So it's funny how perspectives change when you get older and how urban sprawl happens. Because when I was, an 8th grader, nobody lived in Cottleville unless you were like a farmer that had like a John Deere hat on. And now everybody lives out here and way, way beyond where we live. Like we're not like out in the country anymore. We're like in the booming part of St. Charles County. So it's just kind of funny. So that's where things stand right now. But yeah, that's why I love baseball though, because I grew up playing baseball. And then what I love really about baseball is that it happens every night. And every night you can either flip on the ball game and just have it on in the background, kind of watch what's going on. Or, I love to listen to the baseball game on the radio, whether it's the Cardinals or the Royals or whoever. I just love that I have the MLB. I don't buy the MLB package, like the TV package. It's too expensive, but I get the radio package on my iPhone. It's $19 a year and you get every home and away game for every team. So you can listen to the radio feed for $20 for the entire season, every game, every team. And I love just listening to baseball on my phone. It's just something about it. The conversations, like listening to the Yankees announcers. There's a guy and a lady that do the games and they do a great job together, that team. I like listening to the Boston announcers just because they're passionate and I love their accents when they're calling the game. I mean, they sound like nobody else. And of course, I like keeping track of the Royals. And then, of course, if you're laying in bed in St. Louis, it's fun to fall asleep to listen into the West Coast games. I wish you still had Vin Scully, but there's just something about baseball. It takes you around the country each and every night, and you get to check in on your players and your cities and all that stuff. So, welcome back, baseball. All right, so let's hit the feedback from last week's show. Then we'll get to today's topic, which is pizza places in St. Louis. But last week we talked about some of my earliest memories of being in the Disney community. And I talked about that Rita Arrow book and then Rita Arrow's angels that would go out there and like lock down all those Cinderella Royal Table breakfast reservations. And if you were one of the beneficiaries of those reservations, it was a good thing. But if you were outside of their little contingent, it was really hard to get them because you were working against this huge group to try to get a reservation, and it became very tough. So we only had a couple of pieces of feedback here, so let's get to those. Dennis Keithley, my good friend down in Texas, big Blues fan. Hey, Dennis, what's going on? He says, so I had never heard of Rita Arrow's Angels until you brought it up. On the surface, it doesn't sound nefarious, but I can see how such a system would lead to abuse nowadays. As for how I got into the Disney community, I'll make a long story short. Several years ago, I was on the verge of turning 40 and I decided I wanted to lose a lot of excess weight before I did. My primary exercise was going for long walks. I started listening to podcasts as my entertainment and reward for walking. I was planning a future Disney trip, so I decided to look into Disney podcasts. Through social media, I found and tried dozens of Disney podcasts and finally landed on BOGP. The walking and podcast listening worked, and I lost over 30 pounds before turning 40. Since then, I've joined the Lizards and have taken up running. I mostly listen to BOGP while I run now. Let me just say this. First of all, congratulations, Dennis. And that's an amazing Dennis. I don't know Dennis that well. I mean, I feel like I know Dennis because I've seen him on social media. He is super kind. And I'm not just saying this because this is just one of the things. Dennis posts these great runs on our lizard group. And if you're a runner or walker and you want to join a great team that'll support each other, just go to Facebook and go to Be Our Guest Lizards. and ask to join. Mike Bankhead will let you in a few days. It's a closed group, but he'll let you in. Um, when I see folks like Dennis, who is always positive, and always posting these great runs, it makes me so happy to be a part of a team like this. And this is absolutely a team. When I do my runs, I feel like I'm pulling my weight, like I'm a part of a team. Because if you're a part of a team, you got to do the work to be a part of that team. You can't just be a slacker. And I see Dennis, and he always posts that little, Be Our Guest logo that he listened to the show, and that makes me so happy because the fact that he used the Be Our Guest podcast to help him become a little bit healthier, that is absolutely so humbling. Because again, I was way overweight too, and I lost a lot of weight like Dennis. And really what got it for me was Mike Bankhead. I had him on a show, and he talked about how he was using running and walking and in the Galloway method he was going through a cancer diagnosis and a cancer fight. And I thought, if Mike Bankhead can do this, why can't I? He inspired me, and it's made my life so much better over the past like 8 or 9 years, and it continues to do so. So I just like that it's not the Be Our Guest podcast itself. What it is, it's the community of people that are lifting each other up. Dennis lifts me up. I hope the show can maybe distract you maybe for 35 or 40 minutes while while you're trucking through a run or a walk or doing something, maybe washing the car, doing something like that. I hope we can always keep you company. That's kind of the biggest goal of a podcast, I think. I think that's why this podcast might work for you. It's just me rambling, but I think the beauty for me, at least, of podcasts, because there's two kinds for me. There's very corporate and high produced podcasts, and there's a place for those. Those sound good, and they have lots of sound effects. They're highly produced. They're good. But I also like the ones that are a homemade, very down to earth, just a friend in your ear talking to you for a few minutes. And that's kind of what this one is, more than the Be Our Guest podcast. I try to make the Be Our Guest podcast more polished. This one is just Mike sharing thoughts for the week, and kind of giving a couple stories. And so that's what this is. But Dennis, congratulations and thank you for being a good teammate. I love having teammates like you. Len Wilcox, he's my good friend out in Maryland by way of Michigan State, says, I think my original introduction to Disney World was from the weekly broadcasts of the Wonderful World of Disney and shows about the parks like this. And he put a Wikipedia article. In my senior year of high school, our marching band went on a trip from Michigan to Florida to march down Main Street. That left a lasting impression with a desire to return someday. I married my wife and moved to Maryland in '84. A couple of years later, we went on a delayed honeymoon to Disney World and went down on a special package that included all the food. I remembered we had a dark blue credit card, our credit card like card with a gold key on it. It let us in anywhere and paid for all the food as long as it was table service. When the cast members saw, they knew they knew the more they fed us, the higher their automatic tip was. We didn't go hungry. That experience hooked us. We have been back about 20 times, with the last being a 3-generation trip with us as the elders. Only found BOGP about 2 years ago. I'm a newbie to this community. And Len, we are so glad to have you. Len is always there, and we record the live shows on Mondays. Adds so much to the conversation. And I know that Len loves Disney, but here's what I know Len loves more than Disney. Len loves his family. I know that he gets such a kick out of taking his kids down there and the grandkids, because I've been fortunate to be able to help him. It's a blessing to be able to help him plan some of his trips. And it's always with Len, excuse me, it's always family first. And that makes, sorry, I got choked up, but that is, I love Walt Disney World, but what I love more than that is the opportunity that families can come together at a place like Walt Disney World. That it started with a band trip, and that he liked it so much that he went back on his honeymoon, and now he gets to share that with his kids and his grandkids. I mean, that is absolutely special. I'm not there yet in my life. I don't have any grandkids. I've been lucky enough to share it with my girls, but someday, maybe, I hope, if God willing, that we could do something like that too down the road. It's very, very special. So thanks for that feedback. If you ever have any feedback, please do. I love feedback, and I want some feedback, excuse me, on today's topic. If you don't mind, just drop by patreon.com/Be Our Guest Podcast. All right, let's get into today's topic. In today's topic, it's a day late and a dollar short, but it'll work. Yesterday, today we're recording. It's March 15th, 2022, but yesterday was March 14th, which around the country, everybody celebrated it as Pi Day. Now, in St. Louis, Mike in the Midwest here, Pi Day has another meaning because Pi Day 314 is, of course, you know, 3.14 is pi in mathematical circles. Get the pun. But in St. Louis, we call that STL Day because if you know St. Louis, like the metropolitan area, that's our area code. So if you ever call a St. Louis phone number, it starts the area code is 314. So we consider that STL Day. So yesterday, all over the St. Louis media, we celebrated things like Emo's Pizza, which is our pizza, which we'll talk about in just a second with Provel cheese. We talked about gooey butter cake. We talked about um, Vest soda. We talked about all the things that we do, toasted ravioli here in St. Louis that are staples of living in St. Louis, and that are not only just like things that we make up, they are truly things that we have. I mean, Vest soda we have. I mean, that's no kidding. Toasted raviolis, I have them probably once a month. Emo's Pizza, you probably have that once a month. Most people in St. Louis. So even though we missed Pi Day yesterday because we had the two other shows for the Be Our Guest podcast, I'm going to talk about some pizza places that I remember growing up in the 1980s as a part of my childhood. And some of these will be the same for you, I would imagine, as a kid. But some of these, I bet you have similar but different experiences. So let me start off here because I don't want to go too long. I got about 10, 15 minutes here. And I think the number one as a kid in the 80s that we all wanted to go to, the gold standard, the place you wanted to go, it was not Chuck E. Cheese. It was Showbiz Pizza. Now, it became Chuck E. Cheese, and I don't know how that happened and what happened with that. But when Paige used to go, my daughter, it was Chuck E. Cheese. However, when I was a kid, it was Showbiz Pizza. And this is a national chain. I'm sure you guys went to Chuck E. or went to Showbiz Pizza. And it was the coolest. Like, I mean, it was just like almost going for me, because I didn't travel when I was a kid. No kidding. We never traveled. So when I got to do things like this was like going on a vacation. And I am not joking. It was a huge, huge deal to get to do something like this. And our Chuck E. Cheese, or sorry, our Showbiz Pizza was right next door to the big toy store that was called Children's Palace. So whenever we went to Showbiz Pizza, usually you also got to go to the big toy store, which was also next to Target. So you got to do kind of the big three. You got to go to Target, you got to go to Children's Palace, you got to go to Showbiz Pizza. Now, if you go into a Chuck E. Cheese nowadays, and I think there are still a few left, I think there's actually one here in St. Charles. It's mostly those little ticket redemption games, skee balls, some stuff like that, all that kind of stuff. You get some pizza, there's like some video shows. Back in the day, if you recall, this was the joy of Showbiz Pizza. One, they had the Rockafire Explosion. Now, if you don't know what the Rockafire Explosion is, they were an animatronic animal band that played sets in the back of the restaurant. Think Country Bear Jamboree at the Magic Kingdom, but a little more edgy, a little more scary, and playing some semi top 40 music. They were pretty cool. Look them up on YouTube. The Rockafire Explosion for the younger folks. Pretty dang cool. And I think there's actually a YouTube like special on it or documentary about what happened to them, all the animatronics themselves. But it was always a treat. Like you watched them. Like no kidding. You would sit there and watch the Rockafire Explosion. And ours was up on Newhouse Ferry Road, by the way. And I talked about that show with it. I did a show about a month ago about everything on Newhouse Ferry and 270. This is one of the things. Okay, so what else did you do at Showbiz that made it special? The pizza. Now, I will tell you, here's one thing, and this is a hot take. So we used to take Paige when she was little to Chuck E. Cheese, which was the changing of Showbiz to Chuck E. Cheese. I like the pizza at Chuck E. Cheese. It's super cheap. I also like many of the pizzas at Walt Disney World. I'm not a pizza snob. So I like the pizza even back in the day at Showbiz. I thought it was good. The pepperoni, especially, it was really greasy, but it tasted super good. So I did like the pizza back in the day at Showbiz. But what brought us in is 8-year-old boys or 7-year-old boys. It was the video games. It wasn't about redemption games back then. It was all about video games. You could play Dig Dug, Asteroids, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, whatever there was, Defender. I mean, when you got the cup of tokens at Showbiz Pizza, in it wasn't just like that you were playing video games. I think what it was, looking back at it from like a 30,000 foot perspective at this point, is that it was it was just the overall environment of being in the arcade itself, because what it was an arcade, right? It was a kiddie version of an arcade. But when you think about that environment, there's a lot of sounds all happening at the same time, because all these video games would call to you with their attract modes. So you'd have Robotron, calling to you, and Defender, and Ms. Pac-Man making that noise, and so forth. And so, as a kid, you're very like hyped up because you hear them, but also think about all the marquees and all the flashing lights and all that stuff. And it was just like, it's like a kid's version of Las Vegas, right? And it was amazing. And I would love, love, love to be able to go back into a 1984 version of Showbiz Pizza today. Just like if it was a time capsule, you could walk back in, same video game, same pizza, same Rockfire explosion. That would be pretty cool. So maybe you had that, but that was like if you when I was a kid, if you could get pizza pie anywhere, Showbiz Pizza. Okay, let's talk about a couple other places that we go. So another place that we would go. Now, this was a place we would go after baseball games. Like if we had a celebration, say the end of the season, think about like your Bad News Bears or something. After the season, you have your pizza party. There was a place in St. Louis that was called Pantera's Pizza. Now, there's still one out here by us. It's actually in St. Peter's. It's the other end of our town. So it's about 15 minutes away. But it was really nothing special. The thing was, it had okay pizza, but they served, and I think Showbiz Pizza also did serve pitchers of beer. I'm pretty sure they did. I know Chuck E. Cheese did, but they served a lot. They served beer, so the coaches and the adults always wanted to go to Pantera's and get pizza and beer. But they didn't have video games. They had a jukebox. I remember that was a big deal because there wasn't much to do at Pantera's, but we always went there after ball games. And I guess we would go there because the pizza was cheap. They had beer. They had a jukebox, and it was closer to the ball field. So you probably had a place like that that was kind of just your de facto pizza place. And the pizza, I can't even remember what there was nothing special about the pizza. We just eat it because we were kids and you went there. Now, let me tell you about another couple places. Happy Joe's Pizza. Now, Happy Joe's was the jam because Happy Joe's was almost like Showbiz Pizza, but it was a lighter version. So it was a place where you would go get pizza, but they had the taco pizza, which I love. I don't know if I had this as a kid, but there is still a Happy Joe's Pizza in South St. Louis, and they just opened one in St. Peter's where I live, just about 5 minutes from my house, about 6 months ago. And we get pizzas from there frequently now. But I had my fourth birthday at Showbiz Pizza because there was one by where I grew up when I was a kid. And so this place was basically, it was kind of like a family owned little pizza parlor. And they usually had about 5 or 6 video games or little, skee ball games, and, just little cheapy kind of carnival-ish like games. They'd have the fortune teller, stuff like that, old timey kind of things. But they did serve ice cream. They had like an ice cream counter, which was cool, with the pizza. But the thing was, they had like a clown that would come around for birthday parties, and they had like a horn, wah, wah, that would like, come out and sing to the birthday kid. And they had prizes for the games. Like you could redeem your tickets for prizes. So it was almost like but it wasn't big. It was like a homey version of Showbiz Pizza, but the pizza was really good. Again, they had a salad bar for the adults. They had beer. But this was one of those places that if you couldn't go to Showbiz, Happy Joe's was pretty good because you still got some video games, redemption games. You got ice cream, you got pizza, and it was good pizza. So Happy Joe's was good. When you got to go there, that was fun. And the birthday party there was always rocking on. So, and we have one now, and it's very much like it was when I was a kid. Happy Joe's has not changed much. So I do like going to Happy Joe's still. Another place we go to that was right next to my house growing up when I was in my first house in St. Daniel, which was the house I grew up in until 6th grade, was a place called Peroni's Pizza. Now, this is the place that my dad and mom loved. So it was more expensive pizza. A lot of times when I was growing up, we would always get Little Caesars pizza because it was the cheapest pizza. If you remember the promotion, the pizza, I don't know how many times we would get that pizza because you got two pizzas, and I want to say they were like $10 or $6. I don't even know. They were cheap. But my dad played in a band on Friday and Saturday nights. He was a drummer at a steakhouse, and the steakhouse was in a strip mall called Florissant Meadows. Well, in that same strip mall, there was a Little Caesars, and so we would get Little Caesars pizzas from that Little Caesars right down the way from the steakhouse. And I just remember they were dirt cheap, and they didn't taste that great. But I mean, as a kid, you didn't care. You weren't a connoisseur of pizza. You just eat whatever was put in front of you. But we ate a lot of Little Caesars. But I remember my dad and mom loved Peroni's pizza. So when we really were having a treat, like on a Friday or Saturday night, we'd order a Peroni's pizza. Now, Peroni's pizza tasted awesome. And it was like a legendary place in our town of Florissant because it was Italian pizza, which means it was very, very flatbread pizza. It was very thin crust. I mean, very thin. And the pepperonis were very spicy. If you got like a sausage pizza, it was that Italian sausage. It had a very distinct taste. The cheese was very distinct. We had this just this past weekend because Peroni's is still in business, and there's one out here by us in St. Charles. This is what Pam, my wife, gets every year for her birthday. She loves Peroni's as well. And so we had this for her birthday when we had the family over, her parents, her sisters, and everybody, and it tastes exactly the same as when I was a kid, and it is so good. It's that Italian pizza. So that's one of those places that I grew up in when I worked at the roller skating rink every year. Our Christmas party at the skating rink was our boss would let us go skiing. He would pay for our lift tickets to go skiing at Hidden Valley Ski Resort in Eureka, Missouri, which was basically just a golf course where they covered it with snow in the wintertime and we could go skiing on the hills. And then after we went skiing, he would take us to Peroni's Pizza and buy us all the pizza we wanted that night. It was always a good night. I mean, that was an expensive, I mean, as you're a 16-year-old kid, like unlimited pizza and a lift ticket to Hidden Valley was, that was $100 night. So we loved that. We appreciated Ron for that. It was very kind of him. So the last thing I will mention, though, that everybody thinks of with St. Louis is Emo's Pizza. And Emo's is a chain in St. Louis. There's probably 40 or 50 of them around town, but it's the thing that everybody knows St. Louis for. And it's just it's Italian style pizza, flat pizza. It's very much like Peroni's, but instead of the normal cheese, you get Provel cheese on top of the pizza. So it is an acquired taste, but it is rocking good. It is super good. So I don't know if you've had that, but it is super good. So if you ever come to St. Louis, I would try an Emo's Pizza. They're everywhere. They're in strip malls. So if you're looking for what, it's IMO apostrophe S. If you're ever looking to come to St. Louis and try one, they're very, very good. So give them a try. It is a different taste, but it's kind of a unique St. Louis thing. My favorite pizza besides Happy Joe's and Peroni's, though, if you're ever in St. Louis, is a place in St. Charles, right in Main Street, downtown St. Charles, is a family-owned restaurant called Frankie Toco's. It's Italian pizza, again, flat as a pancake, paper thin, but it is so rocking good because it's just a family that makes it in this little place. It looks like a house. Frankie Toco's family. Oh, so good. So that's kind of my pizza places here around St. Louis from growing up to now. But here's what I would like to hear. And this is what I find interesting because we spent a couple weekends ago up in Schaumburg and we went to Giordano's Pizza and we got, the Chicago style. And that is so different than what we have in St. Louis because most of the pizza in St. Louis we get is that flat, thin crust pizza. And up in Chicago, you get that super thick pizza that takes 45 minutes to make, takes forever. And then you could only really eat two pieces. Now it's great. Don't get me wrong. I love Giordano's, but then everybody else told me I need to go to Luminelli's or something like that to get this pizza is better. And I've been to Gino's East, and that's the best Chicago pizza I've ever had. That was amazing. So here's what I want to know. because this is going to really, really stretch out from the Midwest. Because I think, most of the people that I grew up with are going to have a lot of the similar pizza experiences that I just said. However, I think it's going to be very different in Texas and California and New York or Boston or Florida. So please do drop by and just give me a little feedback. Just write a paragraph about what is your growing up, like, whenever you grew up in the 80s, 90s, whatever. Tell me about your local pizza joint. Like, what was it like? Did you have video games? Did you have entertainment? Did you just go for the pie? And what style of pizza did you have in your corner of the woods? Like, what do you remember about your pizza joint growing up? What made it special? What made you excited to go to that place when you were a kid? I want to share that on next week's show because I find food is a great way of connecting and food is a great way of learning about different places. And I think pizza is kind of a universal language. We all like pizza. I sure do. So thanks for hanging with me today. I hope I didn't make you too hungry. And I bet I know what you're going to have for dinner tonight, right? If you didn't have it last night, you probably had it last night. But thank you for being a friend. Thank you for always being here. I cannot thank you enough for your support. You guys are awesome. So until we talk again next week, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. Shakies. I've never had Shakies. I'll have to check that out. Sorry, I didn't have that window up. Sorry. See you later.